Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving deep into The Fearless Organization by Amy Edmondson.
Oh, yeah, this one's a good one.
It really is.
It's all about psychological safety in the workplace.
Exactly. And, it's something that I think a lot of people are talking about these days.
Definitely.
But it's more than just like a buzzword.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's actual research that links psychological safety to performance. Like, it actually impacts how well teams and organizations do.
That's what's so fascinating to me about this book. It's not just about, creating a nice work environment.
Right. It's not just about being all buddy-buddy.
Yeah, it goes deeper than that.
It really digs into the nitty-gritty of what psychological safety actually means, like how it plays out in real-world situations.
Like, think about it. If you feel psychologically safe at work, you're more likely to speak up.
Oh, for sure.
Share ideas, even admit when you've messed up.
Yeah, without fear of getting punished or humiliated.
Right. And the book gives some pretty crazy examples of what happens when that safety is missing.
Oh, yeah, like the whole Volkswagen Dieselgate thing.
Oh, man, that was a mess.
That was a classic example of what can go wrong when people are afraid to speak truth to power.
And Nokia, too, they basically missed the whole smartphone revolution because nobody wanted to challenge the status quo.
It's kind of scary when you think about it.
It is. And the book also talks about the Tenerife airport disaster.
Oh, yeah, that was tragic.
2 planes collided on the runway, one of the deadliest aviation accidents in history.
And a big part of it was that the first officer and flight engineer, they both had concerns about what the captain was doing.
But they hesitated to speak up.
It's like they were so worried about upsetting the captain or, questioning his authority that they stayed silent.
It makes you think, right?
Mm-hmm.
What crucial information is being ignored or suppressed in workplaces every single day?
Right.
Because people are too afraid to rock the boat.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of the reporting paradox comes in.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this paradox.
So the book highlights research that shows high-performing teams actually report more errors.
Wait, really? I would have thought it would be the opposite.
It seems counterintuitive.
Right.
But it's not that they're actually making more mistakes. It's that they're more open about them.
Oh, okay. So it's a good thing they're not trying to hide their screw-ups.
Exactly. They're creating a culture where it's safe to acknowledge mistakes and learn from them.
And that leads to continuous improvement.
Right. It's like a constant feedback loop where you identify problems, discuss them, and then figure out how to do better next time.
Makes sense. So it's not about being perfect. It's about being open to learning and growing.
Exactly. And Amy Edmondson, she actually did research in hospitals that showed this in action.
Oh, interesting. What did she find?
So the hospital units with stronger psychological safety, they reported more errors, but guess what? They actually had better outcomes for patients.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
It is. Because they were catching those errors early before they could escalate into bigger problems.
It's like they were preventing those little mistakes from snowballing into something really dangerous.
Right. So transparency and a willingness to learn from mistakes ultimately led to better results.
Okay, so we've seen how a lack of psychological safety can have some pretty dire consequences.
For sure.
But what about the flip side? How does a fearless environment actually help teams thrive?
Well, for one thing, it unleashes creativity.
Okay, I can see that.
Like when people feel safe to experiment and take risks, they come up with more innovative ideas.
Right, because they're not so worried about messing up or being judged.
Exactly. And the book actually talks about how fear literally hijacks our brains.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah, like when you're stressed or anxious, your cognitive abilities take a nosedive.
It's like you can't think straight.
Right. You're not as good at problem solving or coming up with creative solutions.
It's like that feeling when you have to give a presentation and you get super nervous and suddenly your mind goes blank.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's that same kind of brain freeze, but in a work setting.
So if you're a leader who's constantly breathing down people's necks, emphasizing what'll happen if they screw up, it might actually be making them less productive.
It's counterproductive.
Totally.
Right.
Totally. Because fear is just not a good motivator, especially for the kind of work that requires you to think outside the box.
And the book actually has this visual, a framework that shows how fear and performance standards intersect.
Oh, I remember that. I like that visual.
It highlights this anxiety zone where fear is high, but standards are low, and that's like the worst place to be.
You're stressed out, but you're not even doing good work.
Right. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's the comfort zone.
Yeah, where everyone's just chilling and nobody wants to rock the boat.
Exactly. And that's not great either because you're not pushing boundaries or achieving high performance.
So what's the sweet spot?
The sweet spot is the learning zone.
Okay, if I like the sound of that.
This is where there's a good balance of high psychological safety and high standards.
So people feel supported, but they're also challenged to do their best.
Exactly. It's an environment where people feel comfortable taking risks, trying new things, and even failing sometimes because they know it's part of the learning process.
Okay, so how do we actually create that kind of environment, that learning zone where people can truly thrive?
That's where leadership comes in, and we'll dig into that more in the next part of our deep dive.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. It's going to be good. So, you know how we were talking about leadership and creating that learning zone?
Yeah.
Well, the book actually gives some really cool examples of companies that are nailing this whole psychological safety thing.
Okay, yeah, I was really curious to hear more about those examples.
Okay, so let's start with Pixar.
The animation studio.
Yeah, exactly. Those guys are known for making some of the best animated films ever, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like Toy Story, Finding Nemo, Inside Out, like so many classics.
And a big part of their success comes from their commitment to creating a psychologically safe environment.
Okay, I'm all ears. How do they do it?
Well, they have this thing called the Brain Trust.
The Brain Trust, what's that?
It's basically this group of experienced directors who provide feedback on films during production.
Oh, wow. So it's like a peer review process for movies.
Yeah, kind of, but it's not just about critiquing the work. It's about doing it in a way that's constructive and supportive.
Okay, I can imagine that giving and receiving feedback in a creative field like that can be pretty intense.
It can be. But the key is that they've created a culture where people feel safe to be honest with each other.
So even if someone's idea gets completely ripped apart, they don't feel like they're being personally attacked.
Exactly. It's about separating the idea from the person.
And it sounds like that trust and respect is really crucial for making the brain trust work.
Oh, totally. Everyone knows that the ultimate goal is to make the best possible film, and they're all in it together.
And Pixar's track record speaks for itself.
Exactly. They've consistently produced amazing films, so clearly they're doing something, right?
Okay, so that's Pixar. What about some other examples?
Okay, let's switch gears completely and talk about Eileen Fisher.
Eileen Fisher, the clothing company.
Yep, the fashion brand.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What do they have to do with psychological safety?
Well, Eileen Fisher, the founder, she has this leadership style that she calls humble listening.
Humble listening. I like that.
It's all about leading by asking questions instead of assuming she has all the answers.
So it's about creating space for others to share their ideas and perspectives.
Exactly. And it fosters this culture of shared learning where everyone feels valued.
And that approach has been really successful for them, right?
Yeah, they've built a thriving company with a reputation for creativity and innovation.
It's interesting how these companies are from totally different industries, Pixar and Eileen Fisher.
Right.
But they both prioritize psychological safety.
Yeah, it shows that this isn't just a concept that's limited to specific types of work or industries. It's a universal principle that can benefit any organization.
Okay, so we've got the creative world with Pixar and the fashion world with Eileen Fisher. Any other examples?
Okay, let's throw one more into the mix. Barry Wehmiller.
Barry Wehmiller.
Yeah, they're a global manufacturing company.
Okay, so now we're in the industrial world.
And they've achieved a lot of success by prioritizing their employees' well-being.
Okay, so how do they do that?
Their CEO, Bob Chapman, he has this leadership philosophy called truly human leadership.
Truly human leadership. That sounds pretty cool.
It's all about treating employees with dignity and respect, creating a sense of belonging and purpose.
And they actually live by this, right?
Oh, yeah. They have this motto, everybody matters, and they really walk the talk.
It's nice to hear about a company that's so focused on their people, especially in a sector like manufacturing, which can sometimes be pretty tough.
Yeah, and their financial performance shows that it's not just good for their employees, it's good for business, too.
I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Happy employees are more productive employees.
Right, and it really challenges those traditional top-down leadership models where it's all about control and giving orders.
Barry Wehmiller is showing that a more people-centric approach can actually lead to greater success.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've seen some great examples of companies that are doing this well.
Yeah.
But I imagine there are some leaders who might push back against this whole psychological safety thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like they might worry that it'll create chaos or that people will just slack off if they feel too comfortable.
It's understandable, right? Like, you don't want people to think they can just do whatever they want.
Yeah, and how can you hold people accountable if you're constantly worried about making them feel safe?
Those are valid concerns, but I think they often come from a misunderstanding of what psychological safety really means.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception that it's about being all soft and letting people get away with things.
It's not about that at all. It's about creating a culture of trust and respect where people feel comfortable speaking up and sharing their ideas, but there are still expectations and consequences.
So it's not about lowering standards.
No, not at all. It's about creating an environment where people can do their best work without being paralyzed by fear.
And that actually leads to higher performance.
Right. The book actually emphasizes that psychological safety and discipline aren't mutually exclusive. They actually work best together.
It's like that saying freedom within a framework.
Exactly. You need both elements for optimal performance.
Okay, so let's talk more about how leaders can actually cultivate this kind of environment.
Yeah, let's get into the practical stuff.
Okay, so we've talked about the theory and the examples. Now let's get into the how-to.
Right, the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, like how can leaders actually start putting these principles of psychological safety into practice?
Well, one of the most important things is framing the work.
Framing the work. What do you mean by that?
It's about setting the stage, helping people understand why their input is so valuable.
Okay, I'm listening.
Like, let's say you're tackling a really complex problem, right? You could say something like, hey, this is a tough one. We need everyone's best thinking here.
So you're acknowledging the complexity and inviting everyone to contribute.
Exactly. You're making it clear that you need their perspectives, their ideas.
And that their voices matter.
Right. You can also emphasize the interdependence of the team, like how everyone's success depends on each other.
Oh, that's a good point, because then if someone sees a potential problem, they're more likely to speak up.
Right. They know that their input could actually make a difference.
Okay, I like that.
What else? The book actually gives a great example from children's hospital and clinics.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
So this leader, Julie Morath, she wanted to improve safety, but instead of just lecturing the staff, she asked them this question.
What was the question?
Was everything as safe as you would like it to have been this week with your patients?
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
Right. It invites honest feedback without making people feel like they're going to get in trouble.
Like you're genuinely curious about their experience.
Exactly. And it led to some really positive changes in their safety protocols.
Okay, so framing the work is key. What else can leaders do?
Asking questions is huge.
Yeah, I was going to say, that seems like a no-brainer.
But it's not just about asking questions when things go wrong.
Right. It's about being proactively curious.
Exactly, like engaging in genuine conversations, seeking out different perspectives.
The book mentions this idea of humble inquiry.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
It's basically a way of asking questions that shows you're truly interested in learning from others.
Like you're not just trying to prove how smart you are.
Right. It's about approaching conversations with a beginner's mindset, even if you're the boss.
I like that because it creates a more level playing field.
Yeah, and it encourages people to share their knowledge and insights.
Okay, so we've got framing the work and asking questions. What about how you respond to what people share?
Oh, that's super important. You want to make sure you're reinforcing that psychological safety.
Right, like you don't want to shut people down.
Exactly. One key principle is to express appreciation, even for bad news.
Even for bad news. So like if someone comes to you with a problem, you thank them for bringing it to your attention.
Yeah, exactly. You want people to feel comfortable being honest, even when it's uncomfortable.
Because if you punish them for being honest, they're just going to stay silent next time.
Exactly, and that can be really dangerous, especially in certain industries.
Okay, that makes sense. The book also talks about responding productively to different types of failures.
Oh, yeah, that's a really important distinction.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So there are preventable failures, like those caused by negligence or lack of training.
Okay.
Then there are complex failures, which are usually caused by a bunch of different factors. And then there are intelligent failures.
Intelligent failures. What are those?
Those are the failures that come from taking calculated risks and trying new things.
Okay, so it's like you're experimenting and you learn something even if it doesn't work out.
Right, exactly. So how you respond to each type of failure should be different.
So how should leaders respond to preventable failures?
Well, those might require disciplinary action or some retraining to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Makes sense. What about complex failures?
Those often require a more collaborative approach to problem solving, like getting everyone together to figure out what went wrong.
And intelligent failures?
Those should be celebrated as learning opportunities.
Wow, I like that.
Yeah, it's important to destigmatize failure and create a culture where people understand that it's part of the innovation process.
It's like that whole fail fast, fail often mentality.
It's about learning from your mistakes and moving forward.
Okay, so to sum it all up, creating a fearless organization is not about being soft or letting things slide.
It's about creating a culture of trust and respect where people feel safe to take risks, learn from mistakes, and ultimately do their best work.
And it requires a commitment from leaders at all levels to actively cultivate that culture.
Absolutely.
Well, this deep dive into the fearless organization has been really insightful.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did. And if you're listening and you want to learn more, I highly recommend checking out the full book.
Yeah, it's a great read.
Oh, before we wrap up, you mentioned earlier you had a 10-point summary of the key takeaways from the book.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. 10 key points to remember from the fearless organization.
Okay, hit me with it.
Number one, psychological safety is essential for high performance and knowledge-based work. It's about feeling safe to speak up, take risks, and learn from mistakes without fear of punishment. Number two, fear is a terrible motivator for complex tasks. It actually hinders creativity, problem solving, and innovation. Number three, high-performing teams report more errors, not because they make more, but because they're more open about them. This creates a culture of continuous learning. Number four, leaders must actively create psychological safety. This involves framing the work, inviting participation, and responding productively to feedback. Number five, framing the work means emphasizing the need for voice highlight, complexity, interdependence, and the value of diverse perspectives. Number six, invite participation through proactive inquiry, ask genuine questions to understand others' perspectives, and encourage idea sharing. Number seven, respond productively to feedback, even if it's negative. Thank people for speaking up, focus on learning, and avoid blame. Number eight, failure is a necessary part of innovation. Leaders should destigmatize failure and create a culture where intelligent failures are celebrated as learning opportunities. Number nine, building a fearless organization takes time and effort. It involves changing systems, structures, and most importantly, mindsets. And number 10, creating a psychologically safe workplace is not just about being nice, it's about creating a competitive advantage. It unleashes talent, fosters innovation, and leads to better outcomes for everyone.
Wow, that's a lot to take in, but it's a great summary. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And to all our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fearless organization. We hope you found it valuable and inspiring. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.